They had no idea, no clue what they were truly doing when they turned on you. When they stabbed you in the back, they thought they were being smart. They believed they'd get away with it, that their manipulation, their lies, their betrayal would slip by unnoticed or worse, unpunished. They assumed you were too gentle, too quiet, too loyal to ever recover from the blow they delivered. But what they didn't realize is that betrayal doesn't just hurt the one who's betrayed. It wounds the one who betrays too. When you betray someone loyal, someone who would have fought for you, who showed you their honest and vulnerable self, you don't just break their heart. You crack something inside yourself. You damage your own soul. And the deeper the betrayal, the louder the guilt becomes during the stillness of the night. At first, maybe they celebrated. Maybe they felt in control, smug, even victorious. But betraying a good person comes with a hidden price. You don't walk away whole. They destroyed something sacred and didn't consider what it would cost, because while betrayal wounds the one who's betrayed, it slowly destroys the betrayer from within. You survived. Yes, you suffered, but you adjusted. You met the darkness and walked straight through the fire. But them, they now have to live with what they've done. Day after day, there's no escaping the memory of what they gave up. No silence deep enough to drown out the shame. They pushed away the one person who was real with them. They burned a bridge that led to someone who would have carried them through the worst of storms, and now they stand alone, surrounded by the consequences of their own actions. They thought you would crumble, that you'd stay down, broken. They mistook your kindness for weakness. But kindness without strength is just vulnerability. And you were never just vulnerable. You were composed. You were grounded. They misunderstood your silence. It wasn't powerlessness. It was self-control. They misread your forgiveness as blindness, but it was wisdom. They thought your heart was soft, never realizing your backbone was made of steel. Now they watch you rise, not with anger, not with revenge, but with focus, with direction. They see you rebuilding, healing, and becoming someone far greater than they imagined, because their view was clouded by selfishness and ego. Now they see the truth. They didn't just lose a person. They lost someone rare, someone they will never find again. A connection built on loyalty, truth, and real depth. And that truth now lives inside them, tormenting them. They didn't betray just anyone. They betrayed you. And that truth, more than anything else, is what undoes them. The pain of betrayal doesn't just fade when the moment ends. It lingers. It echoes. It reshapes how the betrayer sees themselves. At first, they'll try to push it away. They'll say you were too much, or not enough. They'll make excuses, trying to explain away what they did. But those excuses won't hold up forever. Eventually, the truth creeps in. It speaks to them when they're alone. It haunts their silence. It stares at them when they see you thriving, not despite them, but because of what they did. What they didn't realize is that betrayal is a decision you can't take back. They traded your presence for their pride, your loyalty for their convenience, your trust for a moment of selfish gain. And in doing that, they cursed themselves to a life full of inner chaos. You rebuild. They fall apart. And the most honest part, you didn't wish them harm. You didn't seek revenge. You let time and life handle that, because life always finds a way to balance the scales. What they sent into the world, the lies, the deceit, the manipulation, slowly returns to them, bit by bit. And when it does, they're left with the mess they made. They'll look back and realize the moment they betrayed you was the start of their own collapse. At first, it's subtle, a slow breakdown. But soon it becomes clear. Relationships fall apart. Trust disappears. They start losing things without even understanding why. Because you can't build a life, at least not one that lasts, on betrayal. You can't keep pretending to be whole while living in the wreckage of your own lies. Maybe they still smile in public. Maybe they even laugh. But there's an emptiness behind it now, a shadow in their eyes. They remember what they did, and they know what they lost, and there's no going back. That's the curse of betrayal. Once it's done, it leaves a mark. But you are not marked. You are transformed. Yes, you carry scars, but they remind you of your strength. They remind you that you didn't need to get even. You didn't need to lower yourself. You simply rose. And that rise, that graceful, quiet, steady rise, is the greatest justice of all. So let them live with what they've done. Let them sit in the silence that followed your absence. Let them feel the weight of losing someone who once loved them deeply. Let them learn what it means to break something they should have protected. Because what they did wasn't just a mistake, it was a truth about who they really are, and a confirmation of who you were and always will be. And now as you continue to grow with grace, with steady discipline, with clarity they never understood, they watch from a distance they can never cross again. Because they had no idea that turning on you wouldn't just hurt you, it would destroy them. But now they know. When someone betrays a person who is kind, loyal, and real, they almost never understand the damage they're doing in that moment. They think it's just a choice, a quick decision, a mistake they'll forget. But real betrayal is never just a passing event. It creates a wound not only in the one they betrayed, but deep in their own soul. A wound that grows over time. Loyalty is sacred. It's something you build slowly, with trust, with truth, with consistency. And when someone breaks that, especially for no good reason or out of cold selfishness, they don't just lose you, they lose themselves. At first they don't feel it. They're too busy feeling proud or in control, but soon enough the weight of what they did starts to settle in. The guilt, the regret, the doubt, they try to cover it up with distractions, with noise, with shallow approval from others. But when the noise fades and they're left with their own thoughts, it comes back. They remember your face, your trust, your loyalty. They remember the times you showed up when no one else did. The times you gave them the benefit of the doubt, the moments you listened, forgave, supported, and then they remember what they gave you in return. That kind of memory doesn't just vanish. That guilt doesn't disappear just because they pretend it's gone. It shows up in their future relationships. It creeps into their new connections. It blocks them from trusting others because deep down, they know what they're capable of. They know what they did to someone who never deserved it. Some of them will try to defend it. They'll say it had to be done, that you were too much, that they had no choice. But those are just empty words. Deep down, they know they chose betrayal. They chose to be disloyal. They chose the path that cost them something priceless. And every time they see you standing tall, growing, becoming more, they feel it. Not because they want you back, but because they now understand what they can never undo. Here's the painful twist. You healed. You evolved. You faced the hurt and walked straight through it. You came out the other side, not just standing, but wiser, stronger, and more grounded than ever. You were shaken, but never broken. They can't say the same, because the betrayer often becomes trapped in the shadow of their own choices. Their conscience won't let them forget. It's there when they try to love again. It's there when someone trusts them and they doubt they deserve it. It's there when they're alone with their reflection. They're not who they used to be. Something good in them died the moment they chose betrayal. And no amount of success, attention, or praise can bring that part of them back. That's the real price of betrayal. It's not just what they did to you. It's what they lost in themselves. They broke something inside, and that loss. When the people who love you are lost, something important slips away, something that doesn't come back easily. Most people think the pain of betrayal lives only in the one who was hurt, but that's only half the truth. The deeper pain, the longer-lasting regret, lives inside the one who knew better but still chose selfishness, because now they have to live with a version of themselves they don't fully respect. They have to face the fact that they gave up something meaningful. Not because they had no choice, but because they didn't have the strength to honor it. And no matter what they say, no matter how they try to explain the story to others or to themselves, that quiet voice inside never stops whispering. It says, you did that, you made that choice, you lost them. And that voice doesn't go silent. So yes, you were betrayed. You were hurt. But you healed. You stood up again. You kept your dignity. They, on the other hand, are now left with the broken pieces of their own decisions, and they carry that betrayal not just in their memory, but in who they are. They thought they were hurting you, but really they were breaking themselves. They looked at you and saw something soft, something gentle. They saw how you forgave, how you gave second chances, how deeply you loved, and they misunderstood all of it. They mistook your kindness for weakness. They thought your silence meant you had nothing to say. They assumed your patience meant you were powerless. They believed you were too scared to speak up, too gentle to fight back, too innocent to notice what was happening. But what they didn't understand, and maybe still don't, is that you were never weak. You were strong in ways they couldn't begin to imagine. True strength doesn't always shout. It doesn't always come with anger or revenge. Real strength, the kind built from self-control and respect, often shows up as calm, steady, and still. And that's what you had. You had the kind of strength that doesn't get shaken. The kind that stays quiet, not because it doesn't know what to say, but because it refuses to waste words on those who aren't ready to hear them. They thought they could control you because you didn't react to every insult. You didn't respond to every little act of disrespect. You gave them room not because you didn't see the warning signs, but because you wanted to believe there was still good in them. You gave them a chance to rise up with honor. And that's what made you powerful in the most graceful way. Because you were never blind. You just chose not to become like them. Your silence was not permission. It was a test. Your kindness wasn't giving in. It was self-control. You were watching, listening, remembering. You gave them space to do the right thing, to show integrity. And they failed again and again. But still, you stayed kind, not because you didn't see what was going on, but because you didn't want bitterness in your heart. You didn't want someone else's failure to change who you were. That's real power. Not the power to ruin someone, but the power to stay whole even after being betrayed. And when you finally walked away, when your silence turned into distance, they didn't know what to do. People who rely on control and mind games get scared when their target pulls away. They're used to pulling emotions out of people, creating drama, feeding on reactions. But you gave them nothing. You gave them distance. You handed them the full weight of their own behavior. And that weight is much heavier than any fight you could have started. They didn't understand how strong silence could be. Not the kind that doesn't care, but the kind that comes from a soul that has seen the truth and chosen peace. That silence wasn't weakness. It was a choice. It was the moment the storm inside you became calm, and you realized keeping your self-worth meant more than winning a fight. Anyone can scream when they're upset. Anyone can lash out when they feel hurt. But it takes a rare kind of strength to feel all of it, the betrayal, the disrespect, the pain, and still decide not to let it turn you cold. And that's exactly what you did. You chose to grow, not to become bitter. And that choice came from strength, not from fear. They thought they had broken you. They thought you were sitting there in silence because you had nothing left. But they didn't see what was really happening. In that quiet space, you were rebuilding. You were thinking. You were healing in ways they couldn't understand. While they were still playing games, you were rising. That's the danger of underestimating someone who stays quiet, because calm waters often run deep, and behind your stillness was a strength they never expected. You were never stuck. You were getting ready. You let the chaos around you speak for itself because you knew, if you waited long enough, the truth would come to light, and it did. Now they see it. They see you growing. They see you shining without their approval. They see you happy without needing them. And it rattles them because the version of you they thought they could control is gone. You outgrew the small place they tried to keep you in. You stopped proving your worth. You stopped explaining your loyalty. You stopped waiting for them to recognize what they were too blind to appreciate. Now they're left facing the results, not because you punished them, but because life did. Life always circles back to those who misuse gentle souls. And now they feel the emptiness. They feel what they lost. The deep pain of knowing that the person they mistreated was actually the strongest one they'd ever known. They thought you were fragile, but you couldn't be broken. They thought you were simple, but you were one of a kind. They thought you could be replaced. Now they know how wrong they were, because people like you don't just come and go. And when they do, they don't beg to be kept. You never needed to raise your voice to be heard. Your silence spoke louder than anything you could have said. Your distance told the story, and the way you walked away with grace, with peace, after everything, they finally saw it. You weren't weak. You were just waiting for the right moment to stop giving your power to the wrong people. They thought they could leave without facing anything, that they could betray you, toss you aside, and keep moving like it meant nothing, like you were just another face, like what you gave them was easy to find again. But now, as time clears the fog, as your absence grows louder, they're finally realizing what they gave up. They didn't just lose anyone, they lost someone one of a kind. And that truth is tearing them apart from the inside. Because when someone harms a good person, the consequences don't stop right away. Maybe in the beginning they felt free. They thought they'd taken control, made a bold move, or found something better. But that was all an illusion, a short-term escape. Because when the noise fades and the excuses no longer work, they're left with what they really did. You were there when they were broken. You stood by them when they didn't even believe in themselves. When nobody else saw their worth, you did. You gave loyalty that didn't need to be earned again and again. You gave emotional safety, the kind of presence that says, I'm here, I see you, I won't leave you. And they didn't just push that away, they shattered it. Now they have to live with that choice. And what haunts them isn't just missing you. It's knowing that no one else will ever see them that clearly again or accept them with that much love. And deep inside, they know they won't find that kind of connection again. Not because you were flawless, but because you were true. You didn't play games. You showed up with your whole heart. You gave them truth when it was hard. You gave them grace when they didn't deserve it. You gave the best of you, and they didn't even see it. That kind of loss isn't small. It leaves a mark on the soul. Because when someone sees you in your lowest moments and still chooses to stay and you betray them, that regret doesn't fade. It stays. It follows you. It becomes part of who you are. And the hardest part, at the time they thought they were picking something better, something simpler, something more exciting or less demanding. But now, nothing compares. Everything they find feels empty. Every new person feels shallow. Because once you've known something real, everything fake feels hollow. They'll try to replace it. They'll try to copy your qualities in someone new. They might even pretend they've moved on. But deep down, there's always that quiet comparison. A voice in the back of their mind saying they're not like the one you left behind, and it won't matter how many faces they see or how many distractions they chase. The truth is, you were rare, and they lost you. You didn't just give them love, you gave them depth, understanding, peace. You made room for their mess. You held their fears without judgment. You were the one who believed in them when they couldn't believe in themselves, and they threw that away like it meant nothing. But now they know.